So I'd like to go through and talk with you about some typical second language acquisition processes. And this is really important foundational information because before I went back to get my PhD and study all this, I often would see these typical processes and mistake them as signs of a language impairment. So we're going to go through and again, as a foundation, talk through what is typical and normal for a child learning a second language. So when students are learning an L2 or the second language, a lot of times they'll make errors that reflect the influence of L1. So a Spanish-speaking child would say La casa verde, the house green. And so if they pointed to something and said in English, look, the house green, that is not a significant problem with syntax. That's just normal transfer from Espanol. And transfer can occur in all areas: morphology, syntax, pragmatics. And again, those are signs of a difference and not a disorder to be treated in special ed by us. And then we also have interlanguage, which is kind of that system in the middle where the student is approximating a second language and the errors are very, very inconsistent. And I've had teachers refer kids to me because they say, look, this little girl is inconsistent. Sometimes she has the plural S and other times she doesn't. So there's 3 chicken, they lay 10 eggs, the boy is picking the egg up. What is up with that? That's interlanguage. And that's very common to be inconsistent in terms of productions. The silent period is one that really got me. And I remember I was a 23-year-old new master's degree in my first job in the public schools in a very, very poor and diverse area. And I remember the teachers would come to me and say, oh my gosh, Celeste, the kindergarten teachers, Araceli began kindergarten in September, it's November, and she's still not talking. And so I remember a little girl, I got her in, Araceli, assessed her, and sure enough, she wasn't talking. So I put her on my caseload for an expressive language delay. Well, I eventually wised up as my caseload grew, and I realized that in this early stages of learning a second language, many children are going through a silent period where they're focusing on comprehension. And if they're introduced during the preschool years, what will happen, and this is where a lot of people panic, if you do early intervention, this is really for you. Like my son Mark in Montessori, his best friend Ryan started Montessori at 4, speaking only Mandarin, and he was exposed all to English in Montessori, and he quit speaking Mandarin, and he wasn't speaking in English either. So he eventually did really, really well, but that's kind of a panicky period. And so it's important to realize that that silent period is normal. Code switching is where kids will go back and forth between the 2 languages in discourse or within a sentence. And that's a very normal, common communication behavior. And I've had teachers say, well, I think this child is confused. They keep going back and forth between Spanish and English. And that's not a sign of confusion. So, me gustaría manejar, I'll take the car, hasta luego, you take care. That would be fine. Or in the Philippines, when my sisters and I get together, even now for holidays, oh, my boss just gave me this tremendous sense of utang ng loob. Oh, I hate that. Now it's got to be pakikisama all the way. It's going to make me buang if I'm not careful. I gotta be good. So that's normal for us. Drives our significant others crazy, but then if we want to talk about them, we just switch all into Filipino.